Welcome back, Hunters! Alright, now that you've hopefully seen part 1 of my guide discussing the mechanics of Kulve Taroth, as well as why you should be doing Pursuit Level 1, so let's go on to the area-by-area guide to Kulve Taroth. In here, I'll talk about not only what you're supposed to be doing in Area 1, 2, 3, and 4, but also be discussing the best weapons to be using and the strategies to use to actually break the horns in Area 4, since that is by far the most difficult part of the hunt. So, Area 1. To be completely honest, I don't know that much about the specific pathing of Kulve Taroth. But if that's something you'd like to see, leave a comment below, I guess, and if there's enough demand, I'll look at doing some research for it and leave a link over here or something. Either way, it doesn't matter that much because your goals remain the same. You A, want to deal enough damage to her to trigger her transition to Area 2, this spot isn't difficult. B, you want to damage the horn plating without breaking it, so you can take advantage of the opening it creates in Area 2 by breaking it quickly. C, you want to time her red hot state, so that you have the maximum amount of uptime for it in Area 2 and 3. First off, let's talk about the damage thresholds, they're very important. So first is the damage threshold you need to hit to trigger her to leave to Area 2. The second is how much it takes for her to enter her red hot state. I do not have hard figures on these because I've honestly never bothered to count them, but the important part is that the red hot threshold is lower than the transition to Area 2 threshold. So why is this important? Well, it means that if you just attack her normally, KT will hit the red hot state before you trigger her transition to Area 2. This is a problem because it has a limited window when it's active before you have to activate it again. This means that you have less time to make use of it to hit your break objectives in Area 2 as well as hit release conditions in Area 3. Now, dealing half as much damage is not very fun, so that means we want to make sure they trigger at the same time in order to maximize the amount of time we have red hot up. The way we do this is by making use of a tunneling mechanic. So, in Area 1, KT will always tunnel at least once to a different part of the map. During this tunnel, she will not move for about 30 seconds. This is an amazing opportunity for you to squeeze in a whole bunch of damage. If you hit the threshold for red hot, or for the transition during this 30 seconds, it won't activate until after she's done. That means that you can trigger both at the same time to maximize the red hot uptime you have. We do this normally by hitting her with cannons as she's getting out, as well as laying bombs down, so that we can trigger them and hit her chin when she gets out of the tunnel for more horn damage. Then we lay some mega bombs down and use those to blow up her chest, because that's the most annoying part of her body to break, since whenever you knock her down in either rocks or with a pod KO, she lays down on top of them. If you do this right, you can easily trigger the red hot state, as well as the Area 2 transition at the same time. Now let me address the elephant in the room, rock drops in Area 1. Now, we never personally use them in Area 1 on KT. The reason is that if you do the cannon and bomb trick, you can trigger both the transition and the red hot, no problem, so you don't really need the extra damage, it just slows it down. And anytime you drop rocks on her before she tunnels, you have the risk of triggering red hot before she tunnels, which means you're going to have less time for it in Area 2 and 3. However, that being said, if you don't do enough damage and fail to trigger her transition after the tunnel, rock drops can be a great way to squeeze in the extra damage you need. Alright, next up is Area 2. One thing to keep in mind is that the timer for each area starts as soon as KT enters that area. So, as soon as you see the message that states KT has entered Area 2, you have 3 minutes and 5 seconds until she leaves to Area 3. Now, your objectives for Area 2 are: break 5 parts in order to get her to dig, since she will always dig at least once. Break at least 6 body parts plus the horn plating in order to get level 14 rewards at the end. Try to sneak in horn chip damage to alleviate pressure on Area 4. And leave 3 to 4 broken parts after the dig so you can filecast her early and switch to Area 4 gear. Now let's discuss using the horn plating break to your advantage. You have 2 options on how to use it. A, you can break it early on into Area 2 and use it to help break body parts if you are struggling to do so. But B, the more ideal option is to break the plating after she digs and use that 20-second opening to each drop 4 mega barrel bombs on her horns and deal a juicy 7,488 damage. This will definitely help you in Area 4 because that'll carry over. Now let's discuss why do you want to farcast her early to switch gear. Well, so as we mentioned, it takes 45 to 55 seconds to get back down after you farcast. Remember that the moment that KT enters Area 4, she will have a timer start, meaning that you're cutting your 5 minutes down to a little over 4 minutes if you decide to Farcast her after you release her in Area 3. Breaking the horn in time in Area 4 is by far the hardest part of a P1, so you should avoid this. You want as much time as possible to try to break those horns. So this is why the ideal thing is to break 3 or 4 parts after her dig and then just Farcast her group and switch to Area 4. Why, you ask? Well, let's talk about Area 3 then. So in Area 3, your objectives are simple. You try to get a horn chip in before Area 4 if you can to alleviate damage pressure for Area 4, and you try to break 5 parts on her body to trigger the release. And in order to maximize the amount of time you have in Area 4, you should already be wearing your Area 4 gear when you get into Area 3.
But then if I have my Area 4 gear, how am I going to break the last parts I need to release KT?
Simple, Timmy. You use the rocks. So there are 3 rocks in Area 3 you can make use of, right? Each one, when you hit KT with them, will give you 15 seconds of downtime to beat on her. You can use this as an opportunity to either A, get in the last bit of horn chip damage you need, or B, just beat on the parts you haven't broken yet to release her. And because you have 45 seconds of downtime, even with Area 4 gear, it's very easy to break the 1 or 2 parts you need. There's not much else to say about Area 3. If you did Area 1 and 2 well, then this won't last very long at all. Next up, we have Area 4, the most difficult part, and probably the most interesting one to talk about. It does take some practice and finesse to really get this off properly, so don't feel bad if you fail to break the horns within the 5-minute time limit your first few times. But armed with the knowledge in this video, and if you did chip the horns beforehand to make your life easier, you will very quickly learn how to consistently do this every time. Your objective here is simple: smash that horn up. So there are 2 very important factors to succeeding in KT in Area 4. DPS and crowd control. I'm just going to say CC because it's easier. DPS is very important because you have to hit the 45,000 damage in 5 minutes, and that is a lot. However, it is very doable to do that to KT in under 2 minutes, as we proved in our sub 8 P1 run. Now, because KT likes to run around, hit you with huge hitboxes, and their head is really high up in the air, it can be difficult to actually land consistent damage on her. This is where CC comes in. It is for the reason of the importance of CC that the ideal team composition is 3 DPS and 1 CC. It is entirely possible to succeed otherwise, however this is by far the best setup for consistently fast farming runs. First off, you want either a CC heavy bowgun or CC bow. They both work really well, they have different strengths and weaknesses. Heavy bowgun is a bit faster when it comes to sleep and paralyze, which does matter when it comes to solo chaining CC. Like, a heavy bowgun can get a sleep, paralyze, KO, sleep, paralyze off by itself with no interruptions at all during the entire CC chain, and that is very helpful because it means your DPS teammates don't have to reposition the entire time that they're doing damage. However, bow can do this, but it's extremely tight, and if you miss a single arrow, it messes up the chain. At least when bow is doing it by itself. If you have a secondary DPS bow that can throw a few extra coatings out there, it definitely helps. But that being said, the bow is so much better at KO. At least if KT isn't moving, so it's ideal for a CC chain where you want to have 2 KOs in it. Either way, they're both good, probably just use whichever one you're more comfortable with. I will say the heavy bowgun is probably a bit easier to use mechanically, but you do have to know how to craft while loading, and you do have to count ammo and all that. Also, an important note is after you CC KT, if you do not chain another CC afterwards, she'll stand up and do a Rumour's Lava Breath. During any of these Rumour's Lava Breath attacks, if you shoot her with status ammo or with coatings, they don't work, so don't waste them because you want to save them as much as possible. And don't bother running Weakness Exploit either. KT's horns are still not a weak point to shot damage, so it's a waste of skill points. Now let's talk about them fat deeps. Naked KT's horns take a high amount of damage from Sever, Blunt, and Ice. Shot still sucks ass though, but just like how Thunder is good on Clothed KT, the Ice damage makes up for a lot of it. However, there are 2 more things outside of pure damage you want to consider when you're picking a DPS role. That is mounting ability and damage uptime. Mounting ability is important because unless you have a very coordinated and optimized group with a very skilled CC gunner or bower, it can be very difficult to break the horns in just purely the CC that one character provides. I mean, it's very possible, we've done it plenty ourselves in all of our speedruns, we do that, but I wouldn't bank on it, which is why having mounts available is very important. Now, if you're running a DPS with a high mounting ability, bring a friggin' glider mantle. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen greatsword users or hammer users not bring a glider mantle. I guess people just don't really think about it because it's, you know, glider mantle, but it does increase your mounting damage, and also in Area 4 it makes it very easy for you to move yourself around while mid-air and land a nice juicy aerial attack on the head. Okay, now let's discuss damage uptime. So obviously, when KT is CC'd by your teammates, everyone should have 100% damage uptime. However, it isn't really reasonable to necessarily expect you to break horn within those CCs unless you're very coordinated. So certain weapons that can still deal damage to KT while she's running around, smashing peeps, and just being overall a bitch is very helpful. Not really necessary, but it definitely can help. I mean, pretty much most weapons that have high damage uptime outside of CC also lose damage as a trade-off, but it's a thing to think about. Now that's covered, let's talk about how the weapons line up for deeps. First off, the absolute highest damage option possible is the crit element Ice Dual Blades. Because she is weak to both Sever and Ice, this weapon just deals inordinately huge damage, it's just disgusting. Our Affinity Booster Bombardier builds from our sub 8 run deals 1078 damage per Demon Dance to her. That is disgusting. And that was before Behemoth Armor and all these new armors dropped as well, so I mean, it's probably gonna deal more now. But they do suck ass at mounting. I mean, you can sneak in some sneaky 250 or so damage mounting hits on the horns with Glider Mantle, but they're not really that good at it. And for damage uptime, they're also terrible because they can't hit very high up. But the mobility does mean you can take advantage of some openings. Next up we have Greatsword, very popular choice. Now the damage is very nice, not nearly a Ice Dual Blade level, but it is very respectable nonetheless, especially if you can learn to do things like sneak in TCSs on the wake up after she gets up, or landing them right as the mounting drops her down, that kind of thing. Now the mounting ability on GS is insane. With Glider Mantle you can be easily landing level 3 aerials in the head that just deal buckets of damage. It's not unreasonable for a skilled GS user with a Glider Mantle to land 2 mounts by themselves, no problem. Damage uptime is pretty good too, since you can draw/snipe the horns a lot while running around, and it hits pretty high up. For these reasons, it makes GS the best overall in terms of its utility and also decent damage, so I recommend having at least one in the group if for the mounting ability more than anything else. Now for DPS Ice Bow, its damage is pretty good. It's not quite as high as a Greatsword or some other melee options, and it's definitely not nearly as high as the Ice Dual Blades, but it does do a very respectable amount of damage, and most importantly, it can A, have coatings if you want to supplement the CC player, and B, it has insane damage uptime. I mean, you can pretty much just be constantly hitting her in the head no matter what. And of course, the mounting ability is non-existent. It's a bow. Another good option is Hammer. KT is actually even more weak to Blunt than Sever on the head, so Hammer can do some really insane damage. In fact, it's probably the second highest damage offering after Ice Dual Blades. Mostly because Big Bang has a ridiculous motion value, so you just do stupid amounts of damage when things aren't moving. However, because of the KO damage it deals, it can definitely mess up your CC player, so it has to be something that they have to learn to play around. Another option is Ice Charge Blade. This one's definitely nice because you can deal some really chunky damage, but landing all of your SAD files on the head can be really challenging to space properly consistently, so that's a thing to consider. And mounting ability is meh on it, and damage consistency is pretty meh as well. I mean, if you get lucky, you can probably land an SAD or 2 while she's moving around, but I wouldn't bank on it. Especially considering how she's moving around with 4 person's worth of AI, so it's very difficult to manipulate her attacks. Then you have things like Ice IG, SA, Longsword, all that kind of thing, and all of those are good. I haven't actually bothered really trying them or crunching the numbers just because of how powerful Greatsword and Ice Dual Blades is. But I'm sure they can work, it's just that the ones I mentioned before are more the meta choices because they just have huge advantages over the weapons. Now, a very interesting option is Slicing Light Bowgun. So it doesn't deal that much damage, but it definitely deals the most out of any bowgun build, since it uses Sever damage instead. However, it has the best damage uptime out of any weapon. It's very mobile, you don't have to use stamina, it has long range, and it's pretty much just point and click. And also the very good options for slicing, like the Xeno Luna and the Bagel Luna light bowguns, both use para and sleep ammo very well. which is good support to your main CC hunter. However, I would not recommend using them as the primary CC because they can only do one of each kind well. Now, very important PSA here, learn to double bomb. It's not necessary, but it does make breaking horns in time just so much easier. Every round of double bombing is an extra 3,744 damage if everyone's running Bombardier 3, which you should be. And over the course of 2 sleeps, that's 7,488 damage. That is a huge amount of damage. And it's completely free, like you don't lose anything to do it, you just learn how to do it. And it's really actually not that difficult. All you have to do is pay attention to where KT's left hand is when she starts to sleep. Just place the bombs in front of that spot. Then when she falls over, detonate them. You actually have a 1.5 second window until she is wakeable, so it's really not as scary as it looks. And you can just detonate the bombs with pods, or with draw slashes, or the Shoryuken emote's actually the fastest, just whatever. Other than that, some general tips for Area 4, things like watch out for her standing lava breath attack, and make sure you use pods during that time. Anytime you knock her over, that's very easy CC, you can just get a bunch of free damage in. Now I want to reiterate, run Bombardier 3. You use so many bombs on KT to sneak in free damage, it's no reason not to worth it. It's so much more damage than you'll get running any other level 1 skill points. And do not run Pathbreaker for Area 4, we've tested it, it doesn't do anything for breaking her horns in Area 4. Now if you're a DPS hunter, run Rocksteady Mantle and either an Infinity Booster or a Glider Mantle. Infinity Booster is very nice during CC chains, but it's just a bunch of free damage, and then Glider Mantle is of course really good if you want to be doing counting. Now Rocksteady is good for 3 reasons. One, you don't have to run flinch free, and that's important because there's not that much real estate in front of KT's head with 3 hunters beating on her. Also, it means you don't get blown away whenever you double bomb, which is nice, and it also means that those random ass lava drops from the ceiling don't hit you and mess up your DPSing. Now, CC Hunter should have a Rocksteady Mantle for the exact same reasons I listed above, and an Impact Mantle because more KO. Wait, but why wouldn't they run Apothecary Mantle? Well, you see, Timmy, it's because Apothecary Mantle does not affect bows or light bow guns. All Apothecary Mantle does is make it so melee weapons proc their status 100% of the time, but bow guns, status ammo, and coatings on bows already do that. And yes, we've tested it. Well, that's pretty much all she wrote. You probably noticed I didn't include any business guide. Well, A, that's because this video is already really long, there's so much information about KT. But B, it also is because I haven't bothered updating any of my builds since she last came around, and there's been so many new armor pieces that make them better. I'm fairly confident you guys can make your own builds for this with the advice that I've given, but if you really want me to show you some mathematically optimal builds for each of the meta weapon choices, leave a comment below and I'll think about making a video or an imager album or something about it. Now, armed with all of this knowledge, you should be more than equipped to handle Pursuit Level 1 KT hunts. And with a little practice, you too can hit 10 to 30 minute hunts and farm those sweet relics super efficiently. If you made it through this entire video, thank you so much for staying with me. I hope you definitely learned something, and if you did, go ahead and leave a comment below. And I'll be doing more useful guides on Monster Hunter World in the future, as well as just some fun coordinated group speedruns like Kulve Taroth and Behemoth videos that we've done. So be sure to subscribe to see all of those when they come out. Happy hunting! Bye!